Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Tricia Bailey. I am a junior running for Vice President of Programming on the Bold Slate. If elected, the main things that I am going to work on are building tradition, which is making really large events on campus even better and more successful, better advertised, that sort of thing. And I'm also going to be working on reducing overprogramming. That goes through enhancing current student programming, that's encouraging student group collaboration, and that is developing a system through which students can create a post-event evaluation to strengthen the existing program that they already have. I'm also going to be prioritizing diversity and inclusion. If the Diversity Affairs Council passes and becomes part of Student Union, I will be working very hard to make that a really strong part of Student Union. If it's not, that's going to be one of my main goals, is to make sure that that priority of the undergraduate body is institutionalized in Student Union. So.
One of the things that has been an issue this year, and you guys addressed it a little bit in your slate, is overprogramming. How are you going to work to kind of rectify that issue?
Well, the biggest buzzword that I'm sure you're going to hear is collaboration, which is sort of a nebulous idea. Right now, different student groups define that as different things, but what I would work towards is making collaboration a really big part of the planning process, not just as an afterthought. That may come down to some kind of change within the budgeting process of Student Union, so that when you budget for events, you indicate whether or not you're collaborating with another group, so that Treasury in the allocations process can understand that you've already been planning with other groups and are working to combat overprogramming. Since the exec doesn't have a lot of power over Treasury, obviously that would be a suggestion, but I would hope that would be an acceptable solution. Also, recently I had an opportunity to collaborate in a large event as Mr. WashU's campus outreach chair. We realized that Relay and we had scheduled a date auction on the exact same night at the exact same time. Luckily, because we have some overlap in our boards, we were able to come together and create a really successful event. We raised just as much money as we had in previous years, but the event was bigger, there was better PR, a lot more people attended, and just overall it was a more successful event. So I think making sure that student groups know that collaboration and effectively reducing the number of programs but increasing the quality of programs doesn't detract from if it's fundraising, the fundraising that the group gets, or the PR that the group gets, or the individual identities of the group. It's really a great way to make sure that our resources are used effectively.
I have a question. In your quest to reduce, I guess, the amount of overprogramming, how are you going to ensure that the diversity of programming that we have right now won't be significantly reduced? Who will you decide who to cut, who not to cut, and how is that going to be felt out?
Well, I won't have any direct say over what events are cut or not cut, because that has mainly to do with how they're funded through Treasury. And I think your point is well made, that the diversity of programs is really an incredibly important part of WashU's community. And so I think mainly where the reductions or increased collaboration needs to be made are on programs that are already similar. So like 2 date auctions on the same night, that makes a lot of sense to collaborate on that. So making sure that groups that are doing effectively the same programs can come together and increase the overall number of people that attend. That may be groups that have similar missions if they're willing to work together. I think I just saw on Facebook that 3 of the Asian student associations are collaborating on a formal, which I think is awesome, because that'll increase the awareness of all 3 of those groups and make a larger scale, better event overall. So I think it's just the similar programs that need to be collaborating together, but not in any way reducing the diversity of programs.
What things will you have to learn coming into your position?
I've been learning a lot of them in the last about 5 weeks, sitting in on Senate and Treasury. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a joint class council meeting, as well as meeting with lots of different administrators. my strength is not in the inner workings of student union. It's not in the bureaucracy, which is why it's really important that I'm running on a slate with 4 other people who have that experience and can help me. We've been working as a team, and so I'm sure that my relationships with them will help me learn the things that I need to know. Specifically, it'll be learning about the relationships with the people that come into the positions with which I work. So the social programming board, the people on leadership positions there change every year. The class councils change every year. So understanding the best way that I can help them is going to be really important. But again, my existing relationship with my slate, I think, will ensure that that is not a problem. So.
You mentioned how you wanted to prioritize diversity and inclusion. In what ways do you plan on doing this? Should the Diversity Affairs Council be passed? Why do you think it's important that we have that? Sort of what's your overarching plan for diversity?
Okay. First of all, I think that the diversity affairs definitely should be passed through. So opening up diversity training to more student group leaders, that might be able to happen through presidents and treasurers training. I'm already interested in working with SGAC, Student Group Activities Committee, on making presidents and treasurers training, giving them more effective information. Diversity would be a really big part of that. I also think, though, that it's an attitude that student union needs to develop. If diversity is really going to be a priority, it needs to be a part of all of the planning that we go through. So it's thinking about, in this event that I'm having, or this event that I'm looking to fund, how are large groups of diverse students incorporated? How are the cultural shows reaching out to students that don't share their cultural background? Is it happening effectively? If not, how can we make it happen more effectively? So that comes back to discussions between student groups that share missions, and then outside of that, helping student groups that prioritize diversity already understand what their community ripple is and how it can be made larger.
What do you think is the role, or should be the role, of student union in terms of planning programs itself, and how does that relate to the role that SU has with other student groups?
I don't think that student union itself should be putting on programs. I think that if student union can act as a catalyst to bring student groups together to create large-scale programming, then that's the best way that student union can be connected to programming. I think the best example of that is George Washington Week, when members of student union, including Nate, our VP of admin, came together to put on a really great, far-reaching week of events. But I think student union execs specifically should be more of an advisory capacity. We all have experience with, in some manner, putting on programs, and I think that our role should be really helping other students make their programs more effective rather than putting on our own programs.
And your slates talked about school spirit and getting people to games. What types of ideas do you have for that? Especially considering we're youth school. Yeah, we're really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually working right now with the current VP programming, Nora Palitz, on a traditions task force to really highlight why Wash U is such a special place and the things that are our traditions. And I think sports is definitely a really big part of that. Last week was the Greek weekend, getting all of the Greek students out to the games, and I think that worked pretty well. And that's sort of hype and publicity needs to be wider spread. If it worked for the Greek community, maybe it can work for cultural groups community. Red Alert, I think, should have a bigger place on campus and should be able to reach a wider audience. People. Not everyone who comes to Wash U wants to be really involved in the sports, so that's why it's important to highlight the other traditions. We have a lot of different cultural shows. Relay is huge here. Dance Marathon is huge here. All of the the school councils put on really big events. Those are things that are really important to Wash U, and we need to remind people why it's so great that we have those those experiences and those resources, and really highlight the wonderful traditions that we have here on campus. This time?
Yeah.
That went